AI is playing such a major role now, right? How would you basically guide and support young people who are entering the market and policy sector within the energy space?
One thing that AI doesn't do, doesn't innovate.
Today, we are joined in by Keith Bowen, a senior manager in market operations within the NTSA. Keith, thank you for joining us today. Maybe just to find out what sparked your interest in energy markets and economics beyond power systems.
It actually started when I did my undergrad. I was at Maritzburg University, University of Natal in those days, and I studied computer science and economics as a BSc. And then I had a bursary from Eskom. And when I finished, I came to Megawatt Park and I started in the IT area programming. And one of my first jobs was to program for scheduling of power systems and specifically scheduling the pump storage and dealing with pump storage on a regular basis. So I suddenly got caught up in sort of the engineering space as a programmer. But having the economics background, I was fascinated by it. And within 2 years, Eskom rolled out what they called then the Eskom Power Pool. It was an attempt at our first attempt at a market. And because I was programming this scheduling system, I then started getting involved in that market and doing a lot of the work for that. So yeah, that's where it started off. And then I only afterwards went and did my postgraduate in economics honors and masters.
So, from entering through a grad program all the way to you being a senior manager now, what are your most career defining moments?
Interesting question to answer. There have been so many over time. I think specifically that realization that what I needed to study more was the economics of it. Whereas I kind of had the programming background, I was beginning to understand maybe some of the engineering background, although I didn't have any engineering kind of background there. But the economics of it was more interesting to me. So that's when I went and studied. So at a time when I'd finished my master's, I actually kind of focused on what was called power system economics. And it's really about merging that engineering background and the economics of it as to how you then deal with the power system as a very specific type of economics. So
Maybe from merging the engineering aspects as well as the economic, what are some of the mindset shifts that you had to, rather were necessary for you to move into the strategic role that you're now in?
I think what had happened is that, as I mentioned, we had this Eskom power pool, and that was stopped in 2005 because the government decided we weren't going to do the market and it was going to be kind of a single buyer kind of methodology. I then focused more on the planning side of things. So we did integrated resource planning, looking at 10 years out, 20 years out, which was quite different from what we'd been doing beforehand. But now that we're moving back into the whole market environment, it was kind of going back to work I'd done in my 20s and now having to kind of like brush that up and then look at what that meant in today's world. And particularly because so much had changed. I mean, the technology has changed. We're dealing with renewable power, batteries. What does that mean from a market perspective? So yes, those are the big mind shifts, is that we kind of understood the market 20 years ago, but it's a totally different market now with different technology.
Maybe from that transition to 20 years back and now, how important is knowledge sharing and collaborations?
Yeah, it's a very big part of it. So one of the things I always teach the people I work with is that when you train people, you learn in the process. You learn your work way better when you're actually having to teach someone else. And that was something I picked up very early on when we did the market the first time around. My boss just kind of gave me the book, said, right, you're lecturing next week on this, speak, and kind of threw me in the deep end. And it was incredible experience because the more I spoke and the more I answered questions, the more I understood about the world around me. So you kind of then understand how you have to talk to people and get different perspectives. So what we're doing now through the Same School, as we were talking about earlier, the whole idea of the Same School is that you're also getting other people to start lecturing and start talking about this stuff, because then they get to really understand the detail because they're getting asked the questions. So they have to then think through the questions and be able to do that. And the market code development we went through in 2024, where we actually had a lot of these workshops, that was very powerful sort of collaboration, because you're getting views from different industry members, and they all have, obviously, they've got vested interests, they've got things that they're trying to pursue, but you're trying to understand those interests. And that's part of the collaboration, is trying to look at what is it that you are providing to people and what are the impediments as part of that process.
Maybe looking into this current world where AI is playing such a major role now, right? How would you basically guide and support young people who are entering the market and policy sector within the energy space?
One thing that AI doesn't do, it doesn't innovate. AI is it's a learning tool, and it kind of learns, it tries to teach itself things to be able to make our jobs easier.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of the time is for people to learn how to think outside the box, how to innovate, how to look at a problem and come up with a solution that might seem daft, but talk to people about it and just see, because maybe out of that is where we're going. So I think a lot of people, we go through university, we learn a curriculum, we understand that. But a lot of what we learn at going through university or Technicon, whichever, you're coming out of it with an ability to think and a way to innovate and think for ourselves. And I think that's the most important thing, for people to focus on that. And how do I bring something to the table that's different that AI would never be able to replicate?
Thank you for listening to Energy Conversations, powered by Kani Development Solutions and the African Energy Leadership Center at the Wits Business School.